Everybody. I'm Donna Atherton. I am the West Central Regional Quality Council Coordinator. I'm located in Moorhead. And a number of my colleagues are on the call today. And we have a great panel that will give us some wonderful information. So I welcome you all. The reason that we're doing this is because we have a work group that is transition to adulthood. And so I contacted Alyssa, and she wrangled up these wonderful people to help her, and we really welcome their information. I would encourage you, if you have not done so, to go to our Regional Quality Council website. We have some great resources on there. Like I said, we have two work groups actually, one on employment and one on transition to adulthood, and we have some wonderful resources. We made a checklist that is available for people to really consider all the things that they need to be working on as they're from grade 7 on up. So really a lot of detail about what kinds of things they could be applying for or need to be considering to work on that transition. And our employment work group made some videos, so I really encourage you to look at those. Just very, very short videos, about 30 seconds, just little bites of things for you to learn a little bit and share with people, and just bring an awareness of the importance of meaningful work for people with disabilities. And I will hand it over to Alyssa, and the panel is going to introduce themselves. And there you go.
All right, hopefully you can see the slideshow on your screen. And I'm just getting everything organized on my screen here. Well, hello, everybody. Hopefully you're at the right place here. We're here to talk about transition services basics. We're talking about transition from school to adulthood for young people with disabilities. And we're so glad to be here today, this evening. And I'm just gonna go to this slide real quick, just to tell you about our agenda, and then we'll introduce ourselves, our panel that's here today. But we're gonna just take a moment to talk about what we mean by transition services. And then Kara is gonna talk a little bit about special education transition services. And Holly and I are gonna talk about transition services that you can receive from vocational rehabilitation services or our sister agency, State Services for the Blind. Marcy's going to talk a bit about waivers, and then also about a wonderful statewide resource that many of you might be familiar with. But if you're not, this will be great to learn about the Disability Hub MN. So that's our plan. And then we will have time at the end for questions and discussion. So we're not necessarily in order here, but since I'm talking, I'll just introduce myself a little more thoroughly. My name is Alyssa Klein. I work for the Department of Employment and Economic Development, otherwise known as DEED. DEED operates a number of programs across our state related to workforce, as well as economic development. That's what it says in our name. But one program is vocational rehabilitation services, and that's who I work for. And we are an employment services agency for people who have disabilities. And maybe we'll go to the top here, and I'll pass it to Kara to introduce herself.
Hi, thanks, Alyssa. I've got something going on here. I am Kara Temple. I am with the Minnesota Department of Education in the Interagency Partnerships Unit within the Division of Special Education. It's a mouthful. And my primary role is being the E1MN lead for the Department of Education. Holly.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Kara. Hi, my name is Holly Sunderman, and I am also with the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development in the branch of vocational rehab services like Alyssa. My title is E1MN coordinator within our department. And my history most recently was as a vocational rehab counselor before moving into this position. So glad to be here.
Hey everybody, some of you already know me, but Marcy LaCroix, I am a community capacity builder with Disability Hub MN. And what that means is that's just a really fancy way that can be shortened into an acronym of CCB to say that I'm the one who gets to come out and engage with our stakeholders and our community partners and help them build their capacity as to who and what we are at the hub, and hopefully contribute to our collaborative efforts and really boost what we have to offer, and create some common language and common messages for those in the disability community that we support together.
All right. Thanks, Marcy and Kara and Holly. We are your presenters this evening. So why don't we just start digging in? We're going to just do a kind of a high level overview just to make sure we're on the same page when we're talking about transition services. So what are transition services? This is an official, well, I guess I could say official definition across all of our state agencies that support youth with disabilities. It's a mixture of what our federal laws say and what we hope here in Minnesota, which says transition is a coordinated set of activities to help youth with disabilities who are ages 14 and older move from school toward their best life in adulthood. Services are outcome oriented, so we're always thinking about the future and what that young person is striving for. And they're based on a youth's educational needs and preferences for their future. So that whole piece around coordinated means all of us are coming together between school and other agencies and families, and of course that youth being at the center. Transition officially starts in terms of special education, as well as our services, which we'll get into it in a little while, at age 14. But really, transition can start much earlier. I always say it starts at birth, really. We're hoping to set high expectations for our young folks that we all care about, and talking about the future. I know when I was young, there were a lot of discussions about what do you want to be when you grow up, and thinking, about what sort of things can help build my skills and build my interests from a young age. And we want that for every young person. And as the second bullet says, that transition services can be provided in many ways. So of course you think about instruction in a school setting, or you can get instruction in many ways, but we don't want to limit it to just what happens in the classroom. Community experiences are so important, and that I know is what we want when we talk about vocational rehabilitation services and what we can provide in collaboration with schools. Transition services includes employment, and I know Donna was saying that the West Central Quality Council has the two committees on both employment and transition, and really it all comes together. We really have that expectation. We want to see every young person strive for competitive integrated employment in the community and other post-school adult living objectives. So it's all based on a youth's needs. And we have two federal laws linked here because this is what we'll be referring to in particular that define transition. The first is IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and that's the special education law. And then we have the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, which is the law that the VR, Vocational Rehabilitation Agency, works under. So we just reference those here because, again, they both define transition in the same way. They have the expectation that vocational rehabilitation and schools work together closely, as well as working with our Medicaid waiver programming across the state. And so, and Marcy will talk a little bit about that as well. So at the state level, DEED, the agency that Holly and I work for, Department of Ed, and the Department of Human Services, we all work together at the state level and help support our practitioners locally with delivering transition services. And then what we have on here is kind of the primary roles that we talk about coming together and what we'll be talking about here tonight. Again, with that youth being at the center of transition services, the family guardian advocate at that top of this circle here, making sure that they are full members on that youth team and helping youth with making decisions about where they want to head for their best life in the future. We have school staff indicated here. And I always like to point out when we say school staff, we want to think comprehensively there as well. So many youth with disabilities have special education, which includes a special education case manager. But they often have many other school staff that they're interacting with. So whether it be a school nurse, school counselor, a work-based learning coordinator, we want to make sure we're inviting all of those folks to the IEP planning table. The next circle down is the green circle, which is the agency I work for, Vocational Rehabilitation. And again, we have our sister agency, State Services for the Blind. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Service providers, there can be any number of service providers. Our agency contracts with service providers. Waiver case managers might, schools might. We want to make sure that they are, we're getting the input from them and knowing the services they're providing. And then finally, we have waiver case managers. So we're going to touch on all of these tonight. There is a link here that will take you to the Disability Hub. And gives more definition of these roles in the planning team. So I recommend you reference this going forward. So I'm going to hand it over to Kara to talk a little bit more about school services, particularly with special education.
Great, thank you. And again, I am not going to go into a lot of detail by any means. I really just wanted to cover the high level pieces of transition within the schools. So, when youth are entering transition and moving from high school into adulthood, they plan for a variety of things. It's not just one thing. It's, post-secondary education, employment, healthcare, financial benefits, housing, recreation and leisure activities, etc. I mean, it's really kind of up to the youth and what they would like to see for their best life, as Alyssa has said. But the point at transition is really the continuation or the continuum of services across both the adult and the child service systems. So with what we talked about with that age 14 to 22, we know that transition does not stop once a student graduates. There are transitions that they will take once they're out of school and moving through the adult system. But what we know is that this transition from youth to adulthood is critical for every young person. So secondary transition is a process that starts with identifying students' transition needs. Then it continues with planning goals, courses of study and services. That's sort of what this diagram is representing, and ends with the students moving into post-secondary services. So there are 6 steps, some of which I've already mentioned briefly, in the secondary transition planning process. So the process does repeat itself because it's going to be a yearly thing with the IEP meeting. And as the student evolves and moves into life after high school. So each time it does repeat, the process, the goals become refined and then inch that student closer to their ultimate post-secondary goals. So with that process, and again, this goes into the graphic in more detail, that the process includes conducting assessments. From there, they would develop post-secondary goals. They may determine courses of study, identify needed transition services, and then related annual goals, and then coordinating and collaborating with outside agencies. So again, this is just a repeated cycle that that happens throughout that transition period for youth into adulthood. And then we're going to just talk a little bit here about high quality transition planning. So I think Alyssa mentioned this, that schools are the primary provider when we are thinking about transition programming in the school district, but it also does include collaboration with others. And that collaboration should include all of the relevant people involved in that student's life. This could be, for example, VRS, if that process has started, county case management, both, you know, from a younger child up to maybe when the student is going to graduate, related school service providers, family members, advocates, and any other outside community agencies or representatives that are involved in the student's transition planning and who the youth would like to have be involved in that process. So this partnership ultimately, and is what we want, is that it increases outcomes for youth. And then again, we can't talk about these outcomes enough. Alyssa mentioned those in her slides. I just mentioned it in the previous one. But what we hope through this high quality transition planning and services, that we see improved outcomes for all youth, including increases in graduation rates, post-secondary education enrollment, competitive integrated employment rates, and improved independent living skills. So then the next part of it, after we transition out of school here to this topic, then it becomes the topic of vocational rehabilitation services. So I think, Alyssa, that might be you again.
Yes, it sure is. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about vocational rehabilitation and the services that we can provide to actually both youth and adults with disabilities. So I mentioned this earlier, but I work again for vocational rehabilitation services. It's referred to as VRS, or you might hear Voc Rehab. We are a state employment service agency that serves people who have disabilities. As I mentioned, we're a part of DEED, Department of Employment and Economic Development. We serve people with any type of disability, with the exception of persons who are blind, low vision, or deafblind, because State Services for the Blind has the expertise in that area. So they can provide the same services. So if a person is blind, low vision, or deafblind, the first stop would be SSB. And then VRS would serve persons with any other type of disability. I also like to mention that we're a partner in the Career Force system. We have a link to Career Force on the slide. This is the branding for our workforce development efforts around the state that's actually available to anybody. Any citizen in Minnesota can access Career Force. Career Force is all about providing services and supports for people, for the general public looking for a job, maybe needing some help getting prepared for a job search. We also provide services to employers, so helping them meet their workforce needs. So keep that in mind. We actually have 50 physical locations across the state, so you can find out more if you go to that link. And there are lots of resources on the website. VRS is one of many different agencies that come together in this career force system. So many of our offices are located at career force locations, but we also meet people where they're at, where they're most comfortable meeting. So when we talk about students, we go into the schools quite often. We can meet people in libraries or coffee shops or even at their home. Or like tonight, we're all virtual, whatever is going to work best for a person. And our agency serves both youth and adults. So we can start as young as age 14 all the way through retirement. And I think that's really important to know because I worked as a counselor serving young people in high school for 10 years when I first started out my career. And I would get certain young people that just weren't interested in our program at the time, or they're like, hey, I think I've got this. I don't know that I need the help right now, but thank you. And that's fine. But then they graduate and over time they decide, oh, maybe I could use some help. And sometimes they'd go back to their school case manager or somebody they know to say, wasn't there somebody that I met with that could help me? So that's important to know that a person can apply at any point. I always say it's good for families to know because somebody in your family might have a disability. So at any age, if they need some help related to employment, they can access our program. And we'll talk more about how you can do that towards the end of our presentation on VRS here. So let's talk a little bit more about what our agency provides. This is a very high level list. And there's a lot of things within each of these bulleted items that come along with it. But the first bullet on here says career counseling, and we have a picture on here on this slide of it's meant to be a counselor working with a person. And that's really at the heart of everything we do is work one-on-one, whether it be with a student or an adult, and anyone that supports them that they want to be a part of their planning team. But it's really about establishing relationships, getting to know the person, getting to know their hopes and dreams for the future and how we can help support that. Our staff are experts in understanding disability and helping folks think about, how will disability impact you in a job? But more importantly, what are the wonderful things that can come along with that, or what kind of things in terms of accommodations or disclosing a disability, how do we not let that be a barrier for you? So we're here to really, again, just meet a person where they're at and help them move along with their career plans. So with that, we can provide supports with looking at job training. So for young people who are in school thinking about post-secondary education or training, and that could be, it can be a 4-year college, or it could be looking at a 2-year technical school. It can also be things like apprenticeship or other certification programs. So it's really understanding where you want to go along your career and what kind of training you need for it. We help people with finding jobs. So that's the job placement piece. We help people with keeping a job. Also, what's not on here, but we also help people with job advancement. So we don't want people feeling like, their first job is going to be the only job they have the rest of their life. We want to help people advance in their careers too. And then we have on this list pre-employment transition services, otherwise known as pre-ETS. I'm going to talk about that in the next slide. But before I do, the last bullet says, and more, because again, there are many things that we can do that are individualized to the person that, we can provide to help them move forward in their career. And it's just a matter of, again, getting to know that person and what their needs are and looking at creative ways to help them get their needs met. So as I mentioned in the last slide, we provide pre-employment transition services, or pre-ETS. These are the primary services we provide to students while they're in school. You'll see that these services are all about preparing for the future. So I'm just going to go through these real quickly so that you know what they are. And as family members, you can be asking about these things if you are going to connect with our program. The first is job exploration counseling. And some of these are probably pretty self-explanatory, but I'll go through them real briefly. Job exploration counseling is all about helping a young person, first of all, understand themselves, where their strengths are, what kind of interests they have, but then looking at what kind of jobs are out there, especially jobs that match with your interests and your strengths. So it's all about dreaming about what you might want to do and getting to understand what kind of options are out there. The second one on the list is my favorite, which is work-based learning experiences. At the beginning of the presentation tonight, I mentioned how important it is to have those community experiences. So we learn a lot in the classroom, and that's so important. But it's also important to be able to, especially when we're thinking about careers, be able to see jobs, be able to try things. I know for myself, it was really hard when I was just reading about different careers. When I finally got to go out and talk to people in those jobs, get that experience where I'm actually doing the work, that made it much more tangible to me and made me really understand what the job was about. So we really want to help young people get those experiences. And some of that is just about even having that part-time job while you're in high school, just like their peers. Some young people with disabilities might need a little more help in getting that. One of the top indicators for employment success for young people with disabilities is that they've had paid work while they're in high school. So we really want to prioritize helping young people with disabilities getting those paid jobs just like their peers while they're in school. The third item is post-secondary education counseling. So that's looking at all those possibilities for training after high school. Also learning how are you going to pay for it. Looking at how you can apply for the programs. We're there to help all along the way. The fourth item is workplace readiness training. And that's a real big category that encompasses a lot of things. So think about what's going to help a young person be ready for work. There's things like what we call soft skills. So some of those skills about like interpersonal skills or teamwork, how to be punctual. Or it could be things like learning how to do your own job search. So we want to help young people understand how to complete job applications or practice interviews, understand what a resume is. When I just said resume, it just reminded me when my son was in high school, in one of his classes, he came home one evening and he said, "Mom, I have to do a resume. Can you help me?" And I thought, oh my gosh, here I work in this field helping young people understand what resumes are. And my son came home and said he had to do a resume. And I don't know, it just makes me laugh. But anyway, workplace readiness training can also include things like budgeting. So, you're going to be paid on a job. Do you have a bank account? Do you know how to budget money? So, it can be a lot of different things. And finally, instruction and self-advocacy is also really important. We want to help young people know about how they can speak up for what they need, either whether it be on the job or in post-secondary education or in the community in general. So we want to help empower young people. So in terms of who we serve, again, as I said, we serve students with disabilities, but I just want to be clear that the definition for that term student with a disability is pretty broad. So a student could have an IEP and be in special education, but they might not have an IEP. They could have a 504 plan, which if you're not familiar, students could have a 504 plan that helps them with some accommodations to be successful in school. Or they may not have a plan, so to speak, with their school, but they may have other medical or mental health documentation. I especially think about young people with mental health concerns or some, needs in that area that might need a little extra support in thinking about the future. So it's nice that the definition of student with a disability and who we can serve is broad. And I think I'm passing it now over to Holly.
Yes, thanks, Alyssa. So here we have talking about what staff are the students accessing for these services. And so there's two types of staff assigned to every school within Minnesota. And so the first one is called a vocational rehab counselor. And so they offer what we would call like the full scope of services, more in-depth services. But then there's also what's called a pre-ETS rehab rep, and they provide more of that introductory career services, and more oftentimes are working with the younger students, sometimes as like an introductory service. And so students can actually access both. They could start with a pre-ETS rehab rep and maybe need to move into full services as they're getting older. It all just depends on what the need is for the student. We really try to lean into the no wrong door. And so if a student is looking for services, oftentimes the way it works is a work coordinator can help get a student referred to one of the staff persons within that school. Sometimes it's their case manager or just a special education teacher. They could, if a student knows about the service, they can request it themselves. So really we're looking at that no wrong door. Send referrals to either staff person. We have this really cool link here that you can check out when you have time. Find the staff assigned to your school. And so you can plug in the school that you're looking at, and it will populate the staff people that are assigned to that school. So it's really great. You could also email Alyssa. She puts her email right on there. Steps for accessing VRS services. So here's the process for students to access it. The first step would be to contact one of the VRS staff assigned to the school that they attend. VRS staff will then set up a meeting with the student and ideally their parents or guardians, really to explain services, how to qualify, and then provide an application packet if they are interested. And so once they receive the completed, once VRS receives the completed application packet, the VRS staff then verifies whether the student is eligible for services. Again, that process includes obtaining verification of the documentation of a student's disability, kind of like Alyssa talked about. So we would access their 504 plan, usually for like that pre-ETS rehab rep. A counselor is usually accessing, after assigned release, their IEP and eval report, and then finding them eligible for the services. If a student is eligible for services, then planning services can begin with that student. All right, so planning for services. Planning for services ideally begins with a team meeting, like I said before, with the student, parents or guardian, and school staff that usually know that student best. So for instance, it could be a special education teacher, maybe their IEP case manager involved in the planning because they know them so well. That meeting would really be to discuss the students' needs, whether it's the pre-ET services or the VRS, the full counselor, how VRS services will be coordinated alongside school services. So, are there services or a time where the student is going to leave for a paid work experience? They really want to coordinate that and talk about how that's going to look. How and when VR services will be provided, maybe a timeline, how communication will take place to keep everyone updated. So, does email work best to make sure everybody's on the same page? Do we need, periodic meetings to check in? And And then when follow-up meetings will take place for the team. So really just following up, making sure everything is going the way it should. Okay, so VRS contracts with community agencies. So VRS contracts with, and I think Alyssa talked, I can't remember, the meetings are kind of going together because we just had one earlier, but VRS contracts with agencies called community partners, and they may join a student's team to help provide those pre-ET services that Alyssa kind of reviewed. These partners can include community rehabilitation programs, also known as CRPs, we call them, which are community-based organizations that are experts in providing those employment services to persons with disabilities. So ultimately, the voc rehab counselor or the pre-ETS rehab rep is going to identify what services need to be implemented. And then we're bringing that community rehab provider in to provide those services as kind of just a team member added. The other one is Centers for Independent Living, also known as CILS, C-I-L-S. They're programs that are operated by individuals with disabilities that support community living and independence. And so again, it's a way for them to voc rehab counselors and reps to access services that they deem as necessary for the students that we serve. And then lastly, Alyssa touched on this a little bit, career force centers. And they also are open, like Alyssa said, to the public. And so there may be different things that we could access through them. Sometimes resume building or mock interviews is another one I like to use if students are looking for some outside perspective on their interviewing skills. We can access somebody through there. So lots of different things. Okay. When you have a chance, you can click on, there's a video that kind of just is a couple-minute video that introduces the services that we can offer, as well as the flyer. And so it's nice to have that for families. There is the QR code too that you can click on to explain all of the different services. And so it's nice to have access to that. Check it out when you get a chance. Okay, so as Alyssa had said, adults can also access our services. There are plenty of times where I was meeting with a student or even had an open case with them, working with them, and it just wasn't the right time. Things weren't working out, things weren't aligning, and that's okay. They can access services as an adult too, and all ages. And so we have now, through vocational rehab services, we have an interest form. And so anybody and everybody interested in services, you can click on the link in here, fill it out, and then that will go directly to a team within that area. And a counselor is assigned to you or the person. And then that's where the services would start, where the counselor would call, do a quick introduction. If the services seem right, then they could set up an actual intake or initial meeting, and services would continue from there. So I think I am going to pass it to Marcy.
Yeah. So I think, Alyssa, are you controlling the slides? I'm just going to give you, this is just again, a high level overview of waiver, because next I'm going to take you into the Hub website and we're going to dig a little deeper into the waiver services and some of the other youth related services and how the Hub can partner in providing that support. So waiver, really, it's additional support, right? It's another way of tightening the web of support around a person so that they can live their best life their way, the Hub tagline. It's asking me to confirm that I'm speaking Arabic, which hopefully I am not. So hopefully if you are using closed captioning, you are not getting Arabic from me. But common community-based services are waivers, and they help pay for those services to someone, for someone to live in their own home who might otherwise have to live. Oh, and of course my dogs are going to bark. It is evening around here. You might otherwise have to receive support in a long-term care facility like a nursing home or a rehabilitation facility, or receive care in a nursing home or hospitalization, which of course we don't want for anyone, let alone our young people. We really want young people to be out in the community and contribute to the community, as we want everyone to be able to do. And that speaks to the quality. Oh my gosh, the dogs are very excited about waivers. It speaks to their quality of life. But there are some eligibility criteria, which includes a disability, oh my gosh, which includes a disability certification, whether that's through Social Security or the Minnesota State Medical Review Team, or what, we have to shorten everything to an acronym. So SMART is what we refer to, the State Medical Review Team, or how we refer to that. The Social Security is, oh, good, you can't hear them. Thank you, Becky. So they're just distracting me and making me flounder like a goof over my own words. So here we go with it, right? Social Security provides a cash benefit, whereas the State Medical Review Team simply says, yes, we confirm that this person has a disability, and so they meet eligibility criteria, or if there are criteria that they can be, they don't have to meet in certain programs and services or supports or benefits, then we say that, yes, this person meets that criteria. The next thing is that they have to complete a Min Choices assessment through their county or tribal office. And this is someone now hopefully going back into their home and meeting with them and talking with them about the supports and services that they identify they need. What's the typical day look like? What supports do they need for getting dressed, for getting ready for school? If work is their goal, what does it look like as they prepare for work? Do they need assistance with bathing, showering, getting dressed? Do they need transportation? Really looking at holistically, what does their day look like? And how can we provide, again, supports and services to tighten that web of support? And lastly, they must qualify for a disability-based medical assistance. That can be any medical assistance that has a disability standard with it, including medical assistance for employed persons with disabilities. Or in the system, it's the other one is listed as MADX, which stands for medical assistance as a person with a disability, to throw more acronyms at people. Okay. Last thing on the slide is that there are different waiver types to meet varying needs, because of course, we want the support to align with the person's needs. So there is a brain injury waiver, as an example, specific for those who have acquired a brain injury or fall under brain injury by meeting other criteria. Most often, though, it is acquired, and we'll take a look at that. So while I'm transitioning to, speaking of transitions, to the Hub website, this is a great time to ask any questions of Holly, Kara, or Alyssa, or myself on waivers. I'll do it. And if Alyssa, you could stop sharing, then I can bring that up. Awesome, thank you. No questions? All right, that just means that I get to talk about the Hub longer. Cool. And hopefully you are seeing the proper screen, which has Disability Hub in the upper left-hand corner and a purple banner across it. And you're not seeing, Facebook or something weird like that. Awesome, thank you, Nora. All right, so we are on the Hub website, and I gave you just this enough about the waiver that, wait, I need more. How do I find out more? How do I make sure that what I'm sharing with my family, with the colleagues, with people I'm supporting, where do I find more information without going into the abyss of a technical policy that exists out there? Because those policy manuals are public facing. They're just not usually what we want to share with people, and can just be mind-boggling for those of us in professional roles, regardless of what that role might be. So on the Hub website, we stick with waivers for right now, and we'll go into youth a little bit. Under top topics, these are trending topics. These are things that people ask us frequently about. In fact, in about the 176,000 contacts we have on average per year with folks, most people are, about a third of those people are contacting us about healthcare. I have concerns about maintaining my medical assistance, or how can I acquire medical assistance? And oftentimes that also ripples into what types of supports. So waiver supports are another means of accessing support for employment, accessing support for building skills, and for young people to live more independently. Or we all need help at some point. So it isn't all about living independently. It's about accessing, knowing how to live interdependently. How do we access those resources? The Hub is one of those things that we hope young people are introduced to, and how to find that information. So as families, as educators, and or a young person, maybe even out on their own right after high school, identifying that they need more support, where do I find information about this waiver? I keep hearing about it. Well, that happens to be one of our top topics. So I can click into waiver, and all of these top topics are very brief overviews. It gives an introductory statement. This one, it lists, there's a few links in here to learn more. Check out under your options, independent living. There's some common questions, which also on the left-hand side is another section of this particular area. And then this is one in the waiver that I find really helpful to share with folks who have questions about waivers, especially families with young people. Review questions and information to help you decide, is the waiver right for you? So when I click on this, it opens up another brief article on deciding if a waiver is right for you. And then we can expand on it, on the questions to ask yourself, people you could talk to, tools to use and gather, and information to gather. Or we can continue to scroll down, and it gives us really a flow chart, if you will. The first question, do you have medical assistance? Because as I stated earlier, that's one of the requirements. Well, yes, I have medical assistance. Great, go on to question 2. But if I'm not sure, contact the Hub. We can help you figure that out. Or maybe I know that I don't, and the answer is no. So now it gives me some information about how to gain access to medical assistance, and some additional information about MA. And it goes on. Do I have a disability determination? Yes. I know I have I'm SMRTed. I have through the disability, or through state medical routine. Yes, through Social Security. Yes, through Social Security, I'm under 18. No, I'm not sure. And it guides you through this process. So this is a great conversation piece, even if maybe waiver isn't the direction we decide to go, but there's all these other pieces, and we can access the Hub and other tools within the Hub to, they keep talking about this min choices assessment, or they keep referring to Social Security and the benefits through Social Security. How do I find out? There's so much here, right? It almost becomes a bit of a Pandora's box of all this information. And I'm fairly certain that most of us have experience with the people that we support, that none of this is simple. the more that we get into Pandora's box of stuff, the more complexities we encounter, and the systems are complex. And that's where where and how and why we exist at the Hub, is to help navigate those things, to help those of us in professional partnerships and collaboration to be able to share information with a common language and plain language, and access those resources, but also to build the capacity and the individual knowledge of the people we're supporting, because it's incredibly powerful for people to know what their benefits are and then build knowledge around what those benefits actually do for them. And when work is something to be considered, most adults have developed a fear of, if I go to work, I've been told I'm going to lose my benefits. Or if I go to work and earn X number of dollars, a blanket statement, I will lose my MA. Or there's all these myths out there that really can be busted. And that's where the Hub can support those conversations. Now, can we be at the table at an IEP meeting? Probably not, unfortunately, because we are a call center. However, we are across the state. We are free. There's no eligibility criteria. You don't have to demonstrate that you have a disability or provide your credentials or your workplace to demonstrate that you are a professional who supports people within the disability community. A no wrong door. Anybody, everybody, regardless of ability or disability, we are a free service to chat, well, during business hours, which is Monday through Friday, 8 to 8:30 to 5, or to call us. And that phone number is on every page that you're going to encounter through the Hub, or given that it's 6:56 according to my computer, which is hopefully a little more accurate than Donna's, we can you can send us an email and request that we call you back within the next day or two, or that we respond via email. So there is a bit of information on the waiver, and it's suggested that we can find more information under your options. Your options is representative of our logo, which is 3 different shaped bricks, if you will, as the building blocks of a person's best life. So in developing our website and rebranding, because if you did not know, we used to be Disability Linkage Line and rebranded about 7 years ago to Disability Hub. The building blocks of a person's best life, generally speaking, are health, housing, independence, work, and money. To find more information on the waiver, we can go into independence. And now we have an overview of what independence is, but then we have additional categories of independent living, self-advocacy, decision-making, youth, and independence. And every one of these sections has an area of how the Hub can help. So for you in a professional role, if you're not certain, you're like, I know the Hub does amazing things, but I'm not quite sure how they help in this section. Or if a person who and with their family is perusing the website, they can look at how the Hub might help. So a little bit of, again, very brief overview with a reminder that there is no wrong question. When I say there is no wrong question, we have supported an individual ordering pizza, someone who happened to have low vision, had recently moved, didn't have access to any of her information at the time because it was late in the day, just needed extra support to be able to call to order a pizza for delivery. So no wrong question, no wrong type of support. We may not be able to give the answer. And so that's where the collaboration and the partnerships come in. We might have to refer to ARC or to PACER or to Voc Rehab for additional information, but we are about connecting people to those resources and supports. Oh, yeah. What's under youth and independence? Well, lots of person-centered practices or tools to support those practices. The life trajectory workplace or worksheet, excuse me. Here's my life now. This is what I want it to be. Encouraging, inviting, allowing young people and their families to dream. What is it that I want for my young person? From a young person's perspective, what do I want? Do I want to live in the Barbie dream house? Do I want to be an astronaut without barriers? What do I want? And then let's look at the things that I don't want. Let's look at the things that are going to keep me from realizing those dreams or experiencing smaller steps within that dream, within that trajectory. There's also some reference to HB 101 or Housing Benefits 101, DB 101, which are additional sites that are tools and resources that are listed in the upper left-hand corner and open new tabs. Okay, before I jump to other sections, questions, something that you would want to see for those of you that have seen me peruse the website 1,001 times. Is there something that you suggest I show? Happy to do that.
Hi, Marcy. This is Carrie Lakuta. I am with the ARC, but I just had a question. You had talked about the fact that people with disabilities don't necessarily lose benefits when they start working, and that's a myth, and you can bust that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, because I hear that
would
quite
love to.
often. So I'd love to be
love
able
to.
to respond and encourage people.
Yeah, I would love to share that. So there's a couple of ways to access information about working in benefits, and they're kind of all over the place. So bear with me as we start to jump all over the place. So if we go back up to top topics under Social Security, you're probably going to find some of that basic information, common questions about disability benefits, and like the difference between SSI and SSDI is kind of a starting point. Understanding what benefit they have is part of that myth busting. A young person who receives a Social Security benefit could be receiving either benefit. SSI if it's not on someone else's record, SSDI or this disabled adult child benefit, DAC benefit, if it's on a parent's record, and the work rules are different. So first step is understanding what benefit they're on. Then if we look at work, I'm back up in your options and into work, we have this section on work and benefits. And when I click into that, the first I can expand these benefits and work. At least I can usually expand them. There we go. It gives a brief piece of information, but then there's a video. And these videos are, we'll see them in a couple spots, but they are less than 10 minutes in plain language, approximately 8th grade reading and comprehension level. They're great for starting to introduce to families and young people. They're great for most of us in a professional role have this basic knowledge with a little bit of information enough to be sometimes dangerous. So they're great for reinforcing what you know and enhancing what you could know. And then a link to DB 101, managing your benefits and doing so while working. All right, I'm seeing chats in here, so I want to acknowledge that I saw it, but I haven't gotten to read it yet. Then, because we've taken that step to know what benefits someone has, SSDI work incentives, SSI work incentives, and then health coverage and work. Because again, health coverage and work, losing health coverage or having it reduced is a main concern. About a third of the calls and chats that we receive are about healthcare. All right, so where do we go from here? Well, we also, just as an FYI, so I don't forget to mention this, there's a section on youth and work, how parents can help you prepare for work supports available through high school, because there are some differences. There's a lot of similarities, but there are some differences for youth. In fact, those differences are more work incentives. Young people on receiving Social Security benefits, young people receiving MA have more leeway. They can actually earn more money and maintain their benefits while working. How much money is that, right? I can imagine every single one of us has been asked, well, how much? How much? And I can't imagine that there is a parent out there or a guardian out there who likes the answer, it depends, any more than we like giving it or than we like receiving that. So how do we find out how much it depends is? That's where DB 101, Disability Benefits 101, comes in to be hugely beneficial. So when I click on DB 101, it opens up a new tab, so I don't lose my spot on the Hub website, which is kind of lovely. There is an entire section, it's the 4th tab in across the top, for youth. And when I click into this, the left-hand side is broken down into articles that are intended for a young person, or young people and benefits for young people. Start planning now what the options of getting a higher education, finding a job, actually working. The other side, the right-hand side, is for parents, parent focus, 4 ways benefits support work. So talking about work incentives, that work is actually possible. Yes, your child has a different ability, has a disability, needs accommodations. Yes, those are true, but that does not take work off the table. Work is possible. Putting work into the plan, as a couple people have already said, we generally are asking kindergartners and earlier, what do you want to be when you grow up? Normalizing that as part of the conversation for young people with disabilities as well, and continuing that regardless of benefits received. And then turning 18, a huge transition point, a lot of benefit eligibility changes when a young person reaches 18. And then we acknowledge that parents are the ones who are managing benefits sometimes well into a person with disabilities, well into their adulthood, and that can be a full-time job. So some tips, tricks, and some information on managing those benefits. So now we've got the information and we've got this understanding of how, but we still need, give me the numbers. Marcy, just give me how much. Well, we can find that through a couple of ways. The work and benefits tab, which is the first tab after home, has specifics about ways to manage money, things that I can contribute money to, save money without it being counted, so that it doesn't count as, it's not countable income according to many benefits and services that have a financial eligibility criteria to them. How do there's a going to work toolbox in here. So more about the how and the why. And to get to those numbers, then we want to go into my vault. I am already signed in to my, oh, nope, I lied. I'm not signed into my vault on here, which is weird because it should be a single sign-on and it just did not refresh properly. So bear with me while I do sign in on DB 101. It says I'm logged in. Cool. So I'm accessing the vault. I can access it through, I clicked over to the Hub website and I can access it. See, I'm signed in here. In the upper right-hand corner, I can access it here. Click on my vaults, click on my planning paths. And when I access it through the Hub website, I am seeing every single tool and activity available to me within the vault. Here's benefits planning paths. Here's plan for work. And here's ones related to housing or that are just housed in HB 101, like a communication profile. How do I best communicate? How do I communicate when I'm upset? Those sorts of things. But if I access the vault through DB 101, click on into planning paths again, I'm only seeing the planning paths. So a single tile on this one, whereas if I access through the vault or through the Hub website, it gives me all of them. And the Hub website is the only one that's going to give me all of them. So we need to find out what those numbers actually are for someone's specific situation. If I click into this tile of planning paths, it gives me some activities. It happens to open directly to get a benefits lookup. This is an amazing, if people do not use the vault for anything else, this would be the one thing that I would say to use this. This is helping people know what their benefits are and starting to understand what they do and how much they are. So by requesting this lookup, it goes directly to a response team from DHS that says that they type in, they do the data entry for that person to create a worksheet that tells them exactly what benefits they have. They have MA, they have a CADI waiver, they receive $943 of SSI. They don't have Medicare. They maybe receive general assistance or SNAP or food stamps, EBT. There's so many ways that it gets referred to still. That food support X number of dollars, and it puts all of that in there. And once that request comes back to them in their vault, then in all of these other activities, it's auto-populated. So when I'm looking for how much can I work and make the most of my benefits, this see how work and benefits work together is an estimator. This estimator that I'm going to click back, that green check mark, if it loads for me now, I should not have hit the back button. So see how work and benefits work together, and there's a green check mark by it, means I've completed it in the past. But we all know that life changes and work goals, work experiences are all fluid, right? As are pretty much everything else. So all of these activities can be redone. So I'm going to click into Start an Estimator. And there we go. It's moving all over on me. Start the benefits and work. It gives me a little blurb of what it is and how long it's going to take. And then where there's green information in what month and year were you born, that's where pieces are auto-populated. They're pulled from that benefits lookup, and I can not spend as much time in here. And I'm not going to go through all of these details, but there's some basic questions, some about your disability determination, that sort of thing. And I click continue, and it's warning me I didn't give it a nickname, and which is best practices, so I don't forget what that job was. Maybe that job is Aldi. And then it asked me some more questions, but these questions have already been answered by my benefits lookup. No one in my household has MFIP or workers' compensation, etc. Asked me about my marital status and about my children. Then it asked me about my living situation. Do I live in my own place? Do I rent from someone? Do I pay my fair share? How much are you paying? Well, this one doesn't have a number in there yet, so I'm going to enter 700. That's what I pay for rent. Housing supports, no, I don't get that. And as I go through here, and I apologize, I'm not going to take the time to go into detail in here, but I'm going to update. I get 943 of SSI, and I have some MSA in there, and maybe I get the whopping $24 of SNAP. I don't get any SSDI. Again, these are all pulled from my benefit lookup because they're in green, but they are entered by humans. So human error can come into play, which is why I want to look at these closely and update them. And I'm going to continue on. I'm going to click through here because I want to show you the end result, and hopefully it'll let me click through rather quickly. I might just have to go back and look at. Here's where I'm looking at my work. What is my plan? So this tool is most helpful when someone is, when they're beyond the exploring, when they're not just, I don't know what I want to do, but they have a job in mind, they are working, or they've been offered a job. So this person has been offered a job at Aldi, and I'm just clicking through. Oh, part-time grocery store. Look at that. I went from when I had done this before. No, I'm not going to be self-employed. The amount, the wage information. There. So this is the result of an estimator. It gives me a visual, broken down, color-coded for folks that find that helpful right off the bat. In 6 months, I'm going to have more money in my pocket. I'm going to be better off with this work, this particular work goal. Here's a breakdown of my healthcare coverage. Free MA in 6 months. I'm still going to have free MA. Bottom line, right? People want to know just down and dirty what's happening. This is that summary, all through an estimator that takes 20-30 minutes at most. And if you're having difficulties with it, you call or chat with us at the hub and we can help walk you through it. Then I can look at this timeline. I can either keep hitting continue, or I can jump over to the left-hand side and I can look at the timeline. And the estimator projects out up to 2 years of what's going to happen. So you've told us, you're going to start this job in June. Here's what you can expect. So a young person plans to move out on their own, go to school, those sorts of things. All of that can be put in here because there's also a student estimator, and we can know how much they can work before they lose their benefit. And if this person happens to be on SSI, right? The SSI benefit decreases from 659 or from 943 to 659. That's scary. But here's what your total income for the month is. Well, that's a heck of a lot more than 943. So it helps bust those myths. It gives visuals. It gives a timeline so people know what to expect. It even gives reminders of support from the hub. Where do I report to? Really setting them up for success. Questions about the estimator? That was a really quick overview, but Carrie, did that answer at least some of your question?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That was a great demonstration to just show us, how this can work.
Yeah.
And I suppose people can kind of play around with it and see how much, how many hours they can work. And
Yeah.
because I've known people that have wanted to work full time, but they're like, nope, I'll lose my benefits if I do.
Yeah.
So
another way for people who are just exploring, or maybe want to do a quick comparison, maybe they're sitting in your office or you're sitting at an IEP meeting having this conversation. If we go into the programs tab, that's where we can look at specific benefits, cash benefits on the left, healthcare coverage benefits on the right. So this person we know is on SSI. That video that I showed you earlier, where it has an article has this 80s camcorder sort of icon, means one of those videos is embedded in that article, and you can just click on the icon or you can go into the article. When I go click into the SSI article, it gives me what is SSI, gives me information about applying, making sure I understand how to report, What does a disability determination mean, etc. And as I scroll down, how SSI counts your income and SSI and work. And it has this other icon that is a wrench and a hammer crosshatch sort of thing. And that means that there's another tool in there, another calculator that is more of a quick play with it calculator than the estimator. The estimator takes some time. We went through it really fast, but it still took some time to do that. If I click on this SSI and work, and the page loads, there we go. It opens up a bright sunflower sort of yellow banner, if you will, that has a try it. Get a quick estimate of how working may affect your income. These are not going to pull in that benefits lookup. They are simply a powerful calculator. So what's your monthly SSI benefit? Well, we said it was $943. And MSA, I have 81. If we did do a benefits lookup, you would have this exact information. But if we didn't quite know what this piece of information that they were requesting, we can click on the right-hand side, these question marks, for a more thorough description of what they're asking. Are you blind? Are you under 22? Well, if we're working with a young person, yeah, it's likely they're under 22. Are they going to school at least half time? Yep. Were they working in March? No, they're not going to work until June. And so here's my future plans. Well, we know I'm going to work at Aldi, but I'm a student, so I'm only really planning on working very, very part-time, and I think $300 maybe. And this ERWI stuff, I don't quite get it, so I'm just going to leave it at 0 because we're just doing a quick comparison. And it gives me that visual again. So today my income is $1024, my total income, and when I start working, it'll be $1324. I can print this off so I can bring it to the table and be like, this is what it looks like if I were to work at Burger King. This is what it looks like if I were to work at Aldi. This is what it would look like if I just worked at a summer camp. Or whatever. You could enter in 100 different things and bring that to the table to have a discussion about what's important to you about work. Is it the money and what does your benefits look like? Or is it the relationships that as adults, that's where we tend to build friendships and build more connection to our community, is at work. Then it has a plan summary and another bottom line. And what now? What can I do with this information? Well, I can, if I need more information, I can chat or call with somebody at the hub. And maybe, yeah, this is the plan I choose. I think this is worth exploring. So maybe now I should go do that estimator. And you can do that one over and over again. And then you've got the article to support your knowledge. There's some more information about ERWIs and BWIs. There's the SEIE, the student earned income exclusion for kiddos under 22, for young people under 22. Lots of information in there, lots of things to digest, but all in support. Yeah, you're welcome, Carrie. Okay, I'm going to catch my breath and go read Jessica's question. Okay, so Jessica's question is, can you help if someone thinks their Minnesota assessment is wrong? We can guide them through the appeal process. We can look at, with the support of DHS, we can maybe see some notes as to what was entered by a case manager or entered by a Min Choices assessor. Not always, but it's possible. So depending on what they are identifying as wrong, we can at least guide them. But we can't, for any program, any service, we cannot determine eligibility or say, you know, with definitely you are available or are eligible for this or not eligible for this, or no, they shouldn't have done that. Our role is to say, based on the information that you've shared with us, or based on our understanding of the policy, this may be something you want to appeal. Here's why. maintaining some neutrality, but getting them connected to the right people and right direction. Does that help, Jessica, on that first part? Perhaps I lost her. Perhaps she's not here yet or anymore. Okay, well, we're still going to answer her questions.
She said, yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've got just a couple minutes left. Also, so Jessica to ask, also as someone turns 18, is there a list of what the person or guardian has to trigger and what automatically is done if you are already receiving those services? No list, but it is a great conversation to have with us at the hub to look at that benefits lookup and assess what we know to currently be in place and to guide through each one of those services or benefits individually. There you are. All right. Glad that helped. Okay. I believe we are ready for just general questions, right, Alyssa?
Yeah. No, we're getting towards the end of our time here. I know Donna also put a link to a feedback form, so please give your feedback on this session. It helps all of us for future sessions and what we can provide. We do have a few more minutes if there are any other questions.
This is Carrie again. I guess I just have a question like around customized employment. I was wondering if anybody could just talk a little bit about that, maybe Alyssa, or if you happen to do that a lot.
I can say a little bit about customized employment. And my partners here can also jump in. I know Holly could probably jump in as well. Customized employment is an option for people, typically for people where a typical, when I say typical job search process, where you look up a job like on the internet or you go and apply for a job and you're competing with other people for a job, where that might not always work. It's typically for a person who has more significant support needs and just needs to take an alternative approach to finding a job. So customized employment is, it comes in phases. We go through it in phases. And the first phase is called the discovery process. And discovery is where a professional who's trained in customized employment works with a person, as well as those that support the person, to understand their interests, their strengths, and what we call their conditions for employment. So what are the things that we need to know about this person that will help us help them to get a job? And it's a fun process where they spend time with them in the community. They might go into their home, oftentimes like, show me your house, show me your room, show me what's important to you. Let's try some new things. I want to know how you learn. I want to know what you're best at. In what situations are you at your best? Things like that. The discovery process yields a report that gives a lot of really good information about how we can proceed with finding a job. But it's usually, when we talk about finding a job, we talk about it in terms of themes. We learn themes about a person. So a theme could be anything. It could be outdoors, somebody that really loves being outdoors. They spend a lot of time outdoors. They might have a lot of strengths. Maybe they garden, whatever it might be. We come up with these kind of broad themes, and it brings us down pathways to meet with business people, to meet with employers within that theme area. So it allows for brainstorming where that employment professional works with the person and they go and do informational interviews and meet with businesses and learn about their business needs and look towards where a person might match a need at a business. So you're not going and applying for jobs, you're making connections in the community. It's a real creative kind of grassroots sort of way of finding work. And again, we, our employment professionals get trained in this process. There are limited employment professionals trained. So somebody that wants customized employment, sometimes there is a little bit of a wait to get in with seeing a professional for that. So it's good to be thinking ahead. But you can talk with our vocational rehabilitation services counselors if you're connected or you're helping somebody get connected, and ask them more about customized employment, whether it's the right process. And they could talk about options for connecting with providers that offer that. That's very high level. I wouldn't say I'm the best expert. If anyone else wanted to jump in on that. I know we're at our time here too, but Holly gave me a heart. I guess I did okay. Certainly reach out if you have more questions.